So, a little while ago, I asked my community and mutuals for their hottest takes on Hiro Mashima's critically acclaimed, I think, fairy tale. And I got quite a number of responses from said community and mutuals. A little too many for just one video, but with the plethora of options to choose from, I decided to gather 7, if you know, of some of the most interesting ones, and today, we're just gonna go over them, and I'll give my thoughts on each one. And if this video does well, who knows? I might even go back and do the rest of them in another video. Or at least another 7 or 10. I don't know. But with the preliminaries now out of the way, it's time to dive right into this. So the first hot take on this list is given by @nuggetsdy19 and other numbers, and they stated that Edalas was the worst arc in Fairy Tail's original story. Now, right out of the gate, I just flat out disagree. From an objective standpoint, the worst arcs are probably the ones at the beginning of the story, like the Mako arc, or Makao, or however you say his name, but I'm not overly upset or really upset at all at a take like this. I can definitely see why someone would say that Edalas is their least favorite or just simply the worst in Fairy Tail's original story, especially if you don't like Exceeds. But for me, it's very middle of the road with some great highs, like Erza vs. Erza and the 3 Dragon Slayers teaming up against Faust. Also, let's not forget the send-off for Mystican. That was such a standout moment in the story, and it was very well written. So like I said, I understand if you think it's the worst, but to me there are arcs that are much worse in the series. Moving on though, the next take presented is by @Toadsage, and they say, aside from Makarov, I don't mind the fake out deaths, because ask yourself this. Would you really enjoy Fairy Tail the same way if characters like Erza, Gray, Wendy, Gajil, Juvia, etc. weren't around anymore because they died when they were originally supposed to? I know I wouldn't. While I do agree that the story would be far less interesting and fun if the litany of characters whose fake-out deaths were actually real, I think the main problem here was Mashima's insistence on fake-out deaths in the first place. I'm not totally against a fake-out death. In fact, I think they can be incredibly well done and pull strong emotions out of the watcher or reader. One of the greatest examples for me is the finale of Demon Slayer's 3rd season, where Tanjiro is forced to make an impossible decision of chasing after a demon to save innocence, but if he does so, then his sister Nezuko will ultimately pass away due to the sunrise. Nezuko eventually makes the decision for him and throws off her shield of a big brother so that he can do what's necessary for others in need, while she seemingly gets destroyed by the sunrise. However, once Tanjiro slays the demon, it is then revealed that Nezuko actually survived and is now able to just walk about while the sun is up. This is an example of a fake-out that I absolutely love, simply just because of how well everything in the scene was handled, from the voice acting to the animation to the music. It's a visual masterpiece for sure. However, despite my feelings towards this extremely emotional sequence of events, I'd also completely understand if someone else hated it, because it does immediately undermine the previous emotional stakes and consequences that had literally just been established prior. So really what I'm getting at here is fake-out deaths, if handled extremely well, can be almost entirely subjective. It's up to the viewer to decide whether or not they personally like the choice the author has made, rather than it being something objectively horrible. Although, I will say Makarov definitely should have passed. That was the perfect ending to that character. But for number 3 on this list, we have something that's not too hot of a take in my opinion. It's frankly just a fact, and returning to give this take is Toadsage. And they say complaining about the other Fairy Tail members not having enough screen time in the sequel is just silly. 100 Years Quest is about Team Natsu, not the guild. I myself on numerous occasions have been guilty of said complaints, but Mashima made it abundantly clear by having the 100 Years Quest be a secret that this manga was about Team Natsu. Regardless of that point though, where's Gildarts? Put him in the manga now, or this shit is out. The 4th hot take on this list is given to us by @AlexBG, who says, Ignia vs. Natsu will be the best fight in the manga because Mashima's greatest ability is to use the mirror match trope. Examples of this are many in his other works. Shiki vs. Shura, Lucia vs. Haru, Natsu and Gachil vs. Alaxis, Natsu vs. Rogue, and many others. Now, at face value, this actually doesn't seem too wild. Really, at all. Because this should be the case, and to be completely honest, that's not too high of a bar to beat. And that is because the fights in 100 Years Quest pale in comparison to the ones in the original series. That emotional heavy weight that was littered throughout numerous fights in the original story is just completely absent here. However, if this hot take refers to Fairy Tail as a whole, that is some bomb level heat, and I do not agree at all. It has the potential for sure. I mean, it's the Sons of Igneel, and I would very much like to see Mashima make this his magnum opus. However, there is so much legwork that needs to be done in terms of development for Ignia as a villain, as well as that much needed greater depth in his relationship with Natsu. And I just don't think that there will be enough time before the stories end. So yeah, if the take is in reference to 100 Years Quest, it's a very cold one. If it refers to the entirety of Fairy Tail, it's hot as hell and it won't happen in my opinion. But coming up on the fifth one here, given by @JK Network, the bro, who says Lucy beats current Mira in a fight. Her last fight was against that bum Scullion, and it was a draw. Lucy with Gottfried is packing her up. I said what I said. I don't consider myself a power scaler, and to be honest, I'm not too big a fan of Lucy, but for the sake of agenda, sure, Lucy stomps Mira Jane. And Gray was afraid to fight Mira in the Aldron arc, so by proxy, she stomps him too, I guess. Speaking of Gray, though, this next hot take comes from @Gajil Greenfox, and they wrote that Gray and Juvia's relationship is forced. Gray is just with her because he's obligated to be. They are only together for comedy relief. Yikes. I feel like he's not entirely wrong in this statement, but at the same time, their relationship isn't any less valid because of it. There are incredibly well-written moments that are shared between the two of them, and I feel like Mashima has been able to convey that these two do actually have real feelings for each other, and he's made it pretty believable as well. You cannot like them as a couple, but to say that it's a bad couple and that there's no realness to it and it's entirely forced is a bit too far for me. Now, this final one comes from the boy @Shonen, I can never pronounce your last name, but yeah, and he decided to say that Tenro Island is slightly overrated. Now, I probably should have asked what exactly he meant by slightly overrated, but regardless, it's most certainly on the higher end of the heat spectrum, considering just how impactful and insane the arc was. We got Zareth, Acno, Hades, the return of Loxus, Guild Arts vs Natsu, Guild Arts vs Blue Note, the Guild saving Makarov from Acno, Altair vs Gray, and so much more. It is for sure top 3 of all time in Fairy Tail, and in terms of importance, it's absolutely up there as well. Although, I did hate the stuff with the big fat dude. It was kind of funny, but he was very annoying to me and and Grimoire Heart did have some very forgettable members. In fact, outside of Altair, Zancro, Azuma, and Hades, the rest are really meh to me. But even with that being the case, I'd still say that the arc deserves all the praise it gets because the highs are some of the best in the series. With all that said, however, that brings us to the conclusion of the hot takes. There were a plethora of submissions, and for the sake of getting this video out in a timely manner, I needed to limit how many were covered. But thank you to everyone that did join in and give their takes. I'm extremely grateful, and like I said, if this video does well enough, I will make a part 2. But part 1 is done now, so thank you all very much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with the notifications on, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody!